time. Um, all right, and I hope you don't mind if I move a little bit while we talk. So if you get this notification in time, if you can jump on, I would love to see you on. I would love to have this conversation with you live as it's meant to be. But if not, hopefully you can get something out of the recording. So look, we're going to be talking about our um, first of the three myths, the food myths that we'll be breaking down. Okay. So in talking about how to eat for wellness resilience, we talked about these three food myths. Now, we have to bust those. So, we're going to talk about exactly how to do that. When did we talk about these? Look, if you all are on the daily wellness text chat where you're getting a daily text message, then you saw the three text messages or the, 7 text messages last week that talked about these myths. And now we're going to go week by week and break down each of the three myths. So you also know, if you're on the daily text chat, that every Wednesday we have a Fight Well Wednesday workshop. That's a mouthful. And when we do that, we are making sure that we have some face-to-face time, kind of like this, but longer, an actual hour. And it's an opportunity for us to break down what we learned the week before. So going through those three myths that were communicated in last week's text messages. That's what we started to do last Wednesday, last Fight Well Wednesday. So you can get that recording right here in our Fight Well community. The recording is in the library. It should be in the featured section. So it should be one of the first videos that comes up for you in the featured section. And look at this, out of breath already. That's why you move. Okay. So the first myth that we're going to break down is this really important one. Like, this is one that we miss a lot of the time. When I read articles about what it means to eat healthily or about how food can build us up, I'm consistently surprised that this food myth keeps getting perpetuated. So what is it? The first food myth that we've got to bust is that food is our enemy. So why do we have to bust up that myth? Well, because if you think about it, food is generally our friend. Yes, even the quote, bad foods, right? The foods that we think of as giving us just empty calories, these are foods like, donuts or drinks like soda or pop, depending on what part of the country you're from. Things like Coke, right? Coca-Cola. Give you a bunch of added sugar, not many other nutrients. And that's true. Like, that's just fact. But who's to say that those foods are then our enemy? In the right context, we might actually need a bunch of calories that the fat and sugar from a donut or the sugar from Coca-Cola gives us, right? So, like, this is the primary reason why I take issue with this idea that food is our enemy and that some foods are bad. Because for foods that have calories, look, they have the building blocks, calories, that are really one of the main reasons why humans need to eat. We eat because we need calories to live. That's just the thing that's like a little quirk, right? Call it a bug in our programming, but we need energy to live. All living creatures need energy to live, and they get it in different ways. We get it by eating food. And so calories aren't in and of themselves a bad thing. And if you were in a huge calorie deficit and you're underweight and you are starving, it's going to be really important to get lots of calories. So those foods that we think of as bad, as being our enemy, because they have all these empty calories, in that context, they're not looking so bad. They're actually looking better than some of the vegetables that we might reach for that are going to have a ton of fiber, which has no calories, and wonderful micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, which we also need. But those aren't going to keep you from dying of starvation. So that's kind of the one point, the one point in my case for why food is our friend, okay? The second reason I think that we should think about food not as an enemy, but as a friend, is that we need to be sure that we're taking personal responsibility for the eating decisions that we make. Now, the reality is, when we think of enemies, we think of them as what? Wanting to do us harm. We think of them as having bad intentions, right? Food isn't any of those things. It doesn't want anything. It can't think bad things about us. It doesn't make us choose it. That Coca-Cola did not make us drink it. That donut did not make us take a bite, no matter how much you swear you heard it calling your name. I promise it didn't. We made that decision independently. And so when we stop thinking of food as an enemy and we start thinking of food as a friend, then guess what? Our friend isn't going to make us do something horrible, right? Our friend isn't plotting on us. We can finally start putting self-responsibility where it belongs, right back on the self, okay? And then that gives us the best shot at making real and lasting shifts to our eating habits. Trying to cut out cookies, instead of thinking about cookies as a bad thing, instead of thinking about cookies as your enemy, what if we shifted and we started thinking about cookies as a friend? Cookies as a friend that could maybe support us, that have supported us. Because here's the other thing, right? Subtopic. If cookies are so bad, why do we keep choosing to eat them? Take cookies, erase that, insert any food or drink you have been wary of. Any food or drink you're trying to eat or drink less of. Could be anything, right? Could be donuts, could be meat, whatever. The question is, do we give ourselves enough credit for loving ourselves, for advocating for ourselves, to say, well, there must be something with those cookies. There must be something I see in them, something I get from them. And often might be emotional comfort, right? When we have these types of cravings, it might be a social value, like when you go to a birthday party and they have that birthday cake and everybody's eating it and you don't want to be left out, but you also said you were off sweets this week, right? there's value in connecting socially with friends, family, and other loved ones over food and drink. There just is. So why don't we give ourselves credit for really advocating for ourselves? We have more sense than that to do something that doesn't help us in any way, right? We're making the decision to do this thing, eat the cookies, eat the birthday cake, because we do see some benefit. And it could be that when we take the time to balance, we weigh that benefit over the potential harm to our health, for example. It could be that we decide, oh, I just don't need to eat that, right? It could be that we have to reevaluate our priorities. The priority of feeling good in the moment versus the priority of feeling good and being well later on. Maybe those we have to get back into order. All right, but that's a different discussion. So then the third big reason why I think we should consider food a friend, and why I think we can get farther along in our wellness journey if we do that, consider it a friend and not an enemy, is that, you know, the other side of that self-responsibility, self-compassion end of the spectrum, the other side of that is shame and guilt, right? Have you ever been in a position where you told yourself, I'm not going to eat that, right? Even if it's like a dry January, I went off alcohol for January, for example. If you tell yourself that's your goal, right? It's one thing to break that promise to yourself and violate that plan, right? It's one thing to fall short. We all fall short in lots of little ways all the time. Like I'm about to fall short right now, y'all. I'm getting really tired. But let's see how long we can keep this going. So we all fall short. It's one thing to fall short. It's another thing to fall short and then level on self-shame and guilt. The shame and guilt that come with believing that you've done something so horrible, right? For most of us, eating a cookie, eating a box of cookies once is not a life and death scenario. It just isn't for most of us. Even folks who have type 2 diabetes ideally are able to contact their healthcare providers and adjust their medications if necessary. If they're taking insulin, know how to adjust your medications in the moment to control your blood sugar. Or if you're taking oral meds for type 2 diabetes, you're able to ride that out. You know how to eat some protein and some fat to make sure that you can slow the rise of your blood sugar, because that sugar is being metabolized less slowly, or rather more slowly, being metabolized less quickly, and so less likely to cause a spike in your blood sugar if you can combine it with some protein and fat. And so you do what you can to adjust. But for most of us, a one-time shortfall is not a life and death issue. And yet, you know what happens when we tell ourselves that certain foods are our enemy, and then we go and slip up and eat those foods? What we're walking into is a horrible trap that we've set for ourselves. Suddenly, this one mistake that we made, that's probably not a life and death mistake, we turn it into that. Because see, here's the logic, right? I'm a good person. If I'm a good person, then I shouldn't be doing bad things. What is the bad thing? Eating bad foods. Exactly. So what's the bad food? The bad food is the one that we've considered an enemy, the one that we think is out to get us. It's that set of cookies, it's the birthday cake, it's whatever, right? Suddenly, this one mistake we made means so much more than just a mistake. And that makes it even harder to bounce back from. Hopefully, we've gotten this far in life because we've learned to bounce back from mistakes. We've learned to overcome adversity. I'm looking at you, sis, because I know Black women, we know how to overcome all types of adversity. So you probably know how to do that. But you've just made this one mistake into so much more than just a mistake. It's damning almost, right? Because if you're the type of person who does bad things, if I'm the type of person who does bad things, then do I even deserve anything good? Do I even deserve whatever wellness goal I'm working towards? Do I deserve that outcome? I mean, I start to question it if I've done this really bad thing of eating a bad food. And so that's our main reason, or our third reason rather, for thinking of food as a friend rather than an enemy. Okay. So our three reasons for thinking of food as a friend rather than an enemy. First one is going to be, this is an excellent test of my memory here while I'm exercising. But the first thing is going to be, food as a friend helps us take personal responsibility because our friends aren't out to get us. Our friends aren't making us do crazy, wild things, right? But enemies might. So we take that power from the food or the drink, we give it back to ourselves. Food as a friend, we're in control in that relationship. Second reason why we might want to consider food as a friend would be, we'll skip to the third reason here. Third reason why takes that power, it harkens back to that same relationship of power, right? It takes that power and it says, you know what? Not only do I have power in this relationship with food, which is a friend, but I also, right? So I can take self-responsibility. I can also balance where I fall on the other side of that spectrum. I don't have to rebound back to shame and guilt because I haven't done a bad thing by eating this bad food, because it's not a bad food, right? So those are our main reasons why. And then somewhere in there, you've got this idea that, you know what, it's a lot harder to make good on our promises to ourselves. It's a lot harder to walk through the world with our heads up with dignity when we feel secretly like we've done this bad thing. So then what's the alternative, right? Thinking about food as a friend, it doesn't mean we eat everything all the time. Think about how you handle your friends. There are some friends who are great for a party. They're dear to you. You have a great time when you're with them. But if you hang with that friend Sunday night, you might not wake up from work the next day. If you hang with that friend Wednesday night, you might get fired. So you have to make strategic decisions about when you spend time with these friends, right? Some friends, like fruits and veggies and whole grains. We can eat pretty comfortably. Whole grains, certainly in moderation, but fruits and veggies, because of their nutritional composition, where they've got lots of fiber to fill us up and not so many calories to build up our energy stores, we can generally eat a lot of those without causing much, if any, harm, because we'll fill up. Our stomachs will be stuffed before we eat enough to have too much of any of their nutrients or too much of their calories. And so that's one way to think about food as friend. And then if you got those cookies can be your friend too, girl. Just not that Sunday night, Wednesday night friend. If you want to keep your job, if you want everything in your life to keep going smoothly, maybe you decide, in conjunction with your healthcare team and your own understanding of the role that these cookies play in your health and your wellness goals, you decide what boundaries to put around your friendship with cookies. You might decide to only eat cookies when you go out for these social celebrations and not to eat them at home. You might decide you can have a cookie every night and it doesn't seem to throw off what you're doing because of the way the rest of your daily diet looks. You might decide, you might realize if you try that cookie every night, shoot, can't stop at just one. And you might go back to not keeping cookies in your house so that you can have a little bit more control in that relationship. So I would love to hear what you all think. Weigh in the comments. Let me know. Do you think of food as a friend or food as an enemy? How would you like to think of food? And also, let me know if you think I just got it all wrong. Because I could. A lot of what I say is based on science. Some of what I say is based on my personal experience. Your personal experience matters too. I would love to hear about it. Hit me in the comments. Talk to you later.